Hello, everyone, and welcome back to One Soccer. I'm your host for today, Josh Deming. I am joined by Alex Gonge-Ruzic and Hady from the Ball is Round Montreal. And today's video is going to be talking about whether there is a shift in the Canadian Classique and if Montreal is basically the kings of it now. So just to start things off fresh here, we're going to go through a couple stats, and we're going to throw it over to you, Alex, first, because the first big stat I want to talk about is the fact that in the last 20 matches that Montreal have played TFC, Montreal has a record of 10-1-9. Very even. But the last 10 matches, Montreal has a record of 7-1-2. They've been absolutely dominant lately. They've won 3 in a row. Is it time to start thinking that Montreal are the kings of this rivalry right now?
I think it is. I think the record kind of speaks for itself. And you just see that Montreal seeming to get up for these sorts of games more. I mean, it's something where, historically there's a lot in this derby. This is what's great about the derby, is that it extends far beyond just the soccer pitch, right? It's something where it comes down to the culture, the two cities. And I think, Hady can certainly touch on what it means in that regard. And I think the fact that Montreal's come into more of these games lately and won them, I think you have to absolutely start looking at them as the kings of a derby, because it's not often you see a derby get this one-sided, and it feels like it's just kind of sprung up on us and we haven't noticed it.
Now, Hady, what is the fan feeling right now around the club? I'm assuming it's probably pretty high, but when you look at those numbers, did you realize that you were that dominant against TFC in these past 10 or so matches?
We realized that we were dominant altogether under Wilfried Nancy, for sure, right? Because not only against TFCs, but against everybody and all the teams that we played against. Now, of course, there's always a special feeling playing against Toronto. As a fan, as a media member, you can really sense the tension and everything. Now, am I surprised? Not really surprised, but happy for sure. And when you see that Montreal is dominating, and what's really nice about it is that you see that they're dominating not only on the results side, but also on the pitch. You see that Montreal is getting the upper hand every time they're playing against Toronto FC. Now you see a difference between the game, how it's played under Wilfried Nancy and how it was played few days ago with Hernan Losada, but at the end of the day, the result is still the same, a win for Montreal. So that's always a good thing.
And I want to rewind a little bit as well, because TFC are known for spending. I mean, there's a stat out there that Insigne makes more money than everyone on CF Montreal. But at the beginning of this season, after a really impressive last campaign, CF Montreal lost Mihailovic, Johnston, Kone, plus their head coach who done so well there, Wilfried Nancy. And the season started off really poor, 1-0-6. Those are obviously big names to try to fill. Having that really difficult start to the season was obviously challenging. Now, I want to focus in on something, because I think this is very interesting, and Canadians fans will understand this, because Kamal Miller is a massive player for CF Montreal. He's a massive player for the Canadian national team. But all of a sudden, this trade went down when Montreal were struggling. Miller goes to Inter Miami. There's obviously a little bit more to the deal, but the pieces that came back was Lassiter and Duke. And since that trade, Montreal have won 5 in a row. They have a 5-0-1 record and get a 5-0-1 record since the trade. I want to know what the feeling was when that trade went down, and if Montreal fans, because I thought the consensus was that we got ripped off. But now, after seeing the way that the team has kind of bounced back, has maybe the attitude changed towards this deal?
Of course it changed, for sure. Results change the opinion of everybody, right? But when we saw that deal happen, it was very weird to see Kamal Miller being such a rock in defense since he came to Montreal, being traded with extra money for 2 players Montreal fans never heard about, right? Bryce Duke and, of course, Ariel Lassiter. But when you look at the result and what's going on the pitch, CF Montreal needed a creative midfielder. They needed that player that can play vertically, but also that has a vision on the pitch. And they didn't know Bryce Duke, but as soon as he came in, they saw glimpses of the talent that he has. And just the first game, I think it was a couple of days after he came in from Montreal, it was really, really, really apparent that Bryce Duke was going to be something special for Montreal. Were they expecting such a turnout after just 5-6 games? I don't think so. They were very, very pleased to see CF Montreal really dominate in the game, continue with Hernan Losada's vision, and also see that at the end of the day that trade that was supposed to be not good for CF Montreal and some sort of a bad trade became a good thing for CF Montreal and gave results. And that's something that CF Montreal are praising right now. Olivier Renard and Vasily Karandzilis are seen now as masterminds a bit more than they were beforehand. And I think they're waiting to see the rest of the season, because there's another transfer window and they're expecting again some trades or some reinforcements for sure.
It's definitely smart business. And I was telling Alex this. I was talking to an Inter Miami journalist who said to me, you know what, this does seem like we won the trade, but if this trade is ever going to be even, or maybe even it looks like Montreal got the better of the trade, it's going to be because of Bryce Duke. So Alex, when you saw the trade go down, what are your thoughts on how Montreal are able to maybe cope without Kamal Miller, and how impressive has Duke been for you?
Yeah, well, I think for Montreal, what was nice from their perspective is you have the center back depth to make this trade. I think importantly, it's obviously something where it sucked to lose Miller, but you've just acquired Gabriel Corbo. You've already got, George Campbell back from, on his way back from injury. You had Joel Waterman, you have Rudy Camacho. They're able to give away an asset like this. And in the end, while they maybe overpaid for a player like Duke, he's exactly what they needed, that profile that maybe is as close to Georgi Mihailovic as we've seen, because Schneier, he has the attributes, but it's something where it's his first full MLS season. He's shown flashes, but he's super young. And I think a guy like Duke, who's been in the league for a couple of years now, he's been in that LAFC system, he's been at Miami, he's kind of been around and has gotten a taste of that league despite being so young. I think he's just added a bit of that injection, that difference maker in the final third that they needed. But kind of almost, off the back of that, I kind of had a question for you, Hady. Obviously, this trade, we can see it maybe as the injection of life that the CF Montreal season needed. Now that they've gone and won a derby, you've obviously been around for a lot of derby wins. I remember I was there in 2019 when CF Montreal beat Toronto FC in the Canadian Championship final. I just remember seeing the players. It felt like it was just a weight lifted off their shoulders. Do you feel like if the trade was a shot, do you think that maybe this was just the push down the hill that they need to really take over and start getting really on track in their season?
Yeah, I think so. I think also that the win in Canadian Championship is that important too. So the trade is something that really made things work for CF Montreal, but I think the results are even pushing them even further, believing in the system of Hernan Losada, because it's a completely different way of playing that from Wilfried Nancy to Hernan Losada, and they're starting to believe that this could happen. They could turn their season around, and don't forget, guys, we have there's a lot of injuries with CF Montreal right now. If we look at the tactical formation of Hernan Losada, he wants to have two creative midfielder behind the striker, and it's supposed to be Bryce Duke and Matko Miljevic. Miljevic only played his a few minutes in the last game, so with him coming back to full strength, it's going to be really nice, because those two guys can complete each other very, very well. So if Matko Miljevic can play at his level, at a very good level, like we've seen some glimpse of it last year, I think it could be a very, very strong team in the future.
And Hady, I want to kind of jump on that point as well. And I want to give Losada credit, because starting the season 1-0-6 is so difficult. And to keep pushing your philosophy and start to get it right shows the type of manager he can be. But I also want to highlight some players that I'm starting to think could be in for massive seasons. And we kind of talked about Duke already. Obviously, he's been a perfect fit. But I want to talk about three others. You guys can, I'll throw it to you, Alex, first. You can pick which one you want to talk about. And then Hady, you can kind of talk about the other two as well. But we have Jonathan Sirois, who is absolutely crushing it between the sticks, which I thought was a bit of a surprise for me. I wasn't sure if he was quite ready for that. Herrera, who has just been a perfect fill-in for Alistair Johnston. But the man I want to talk about is Matthew Schneier, who is I think really excited to play in the midfield. He's playing in a position that I think he's very excited to be in. He's talked about that. This is where he wants to be. And playing alongside, I think, Wanyama this season could be very, very good for him. And as he obviously is trying to push for the national team. But Alex, pick your poison out of the three. Who has impressed you most so far?
Yeah, well, I'll let Hady talk about Schneier just because he's the Montreal guy. You can tell what it means to play for Montreal. You can almost feel his grin when they beat Toronto FC. You can tell that he's a Quebec guy. So I'll go for the other Quebec guy, Sirois, because I think he's been huge. Because I think that Pantemis injury could have easily sunk a young season. And I think it's something where, yeah, they weren't winning games, but Sirois was showing up night after night. And every time I watched him play, he was confident. He was assured. Even if he let in a goal, for the most part, he was making the saves he needed to make, and the goals he were letting in were, hardly his doing. And I think for him to bounce back from that is huge as a young keeper. 21, it's such a young age for a keeper, and I think that shows the value of playing on loan in the CPL. It really gave him confidence, and I think that was a big boost for Montreal, because last year, for as dominant as they were, goalkeeping was kind of, hanging over them over the course of the season. Sebastian Breza struggled a lot, and even, Pantemis came in and did well, but, it felt like goalkeeping was maybe an area of weakness, arguably, on the squad versus how good they were in midfield, how good they were at the back, how good they were up front. And I think seeing how good Sirois has been and how young he is, you look at that position, like, okay, Montreal set themselves up nicely for the future. And, maybe this will also light a fire under a guy like Pantemis for him to, look, this was a guy who was at the World Cup. He's probably not happy to be behind a 21-year-old in the pecking order. So maybe this fires him up too, and they have a good little rotation there.
Hady, tell me about Matthew Schneier. What is the reason behind this type of form? Because he's truly one of my favorite players in Major League Soccer to watch right now.
Yeah, he's been very exciting, I think, this year. He's always been very exciting. Now, unfortunately, he had some trouble with injuries at the beginning of his season, and of course, the fact that you're always injured when you come back, it takes time for you to really adjust yourself to the group and to the way that the team wants to play. So. It hampered a bit his ability to shine, and right now. First of all, I think that the fact that he's healthy is helping him a lot. And the second thing, he's playing in his natural position, which is central midfield. But also, and I think that's the most important part, I think he enjoys the way CF Montreal is playing right now. The fact that he's playing a one-touch football, he's able to advance a lot, to go up, to be creative, to be a roaming player that's able to go on the right, on the left, in the middle, and being able to be that free, to have a free role somewhere. It's really exciting for him. And now we're seeing the real Mathieu Choinière. Now what's also been very important in his progression and his evolution, the fact that he played at different positions, as a right wing back, as a left wing back. He played also as an offensive midfielder. I think it helped him develop, some aspects of his game that where he could have improved. So it helped him develop that a lot faster than a usual player. And now in center midfield, you feel that he's more comfortable with the ball, without the ball. He can understand the way all the players are moving. And we're talking about someone that has a soccer IQ that's really, really interesting. So, he's the man of the season as of right now. He's really the one that's making everything happen in CF Montreal.
I was going to say that too. I was like, he's got the footballing IQ you can't teach, and it looks like he's really enjoying it at the moment, which is fantastic to see. But before we shift over to TFC, I do want to touch on Aaron Herrera, because I said I was going to. It is not easy to replace a player like Alistair Johnston. I was excited when Herrera came in here. Kind of seemed like he was maybe going to take his time, but he's really a fit. What do you think is a big part behind the reason he's settled really nicely into that right wing back position, Hady? Even though he didn't start that game, but he's had a really good season so far.
Yeah, I think it's Aaron Herrera came in where CF Montreal was still learning the Losada way of playing. And it took some time for the team to understand what the coach wanted to do. And Aaron Herrera maybe understood it a bit more. And I think when the team started to understand the way Losada wants to play, the runs, how each one has to run, which calls they have to make on the pitch, I think that it showed and it helped Aaron Herrera to start really have an impact, and no pun intended, but to have an impact on the pitch for CF Montreal. Now, you see his crossing ability. that's the biggest threat that he can bring to the table. And you see every time he crosses the ball as a right wing back, there's immediately danger in the opponent's half and box. So it's been, I think, a very good add to CF Montreal, the way Losada wants to play this year, and I hope we're going to see a bit more of that, because I think that team needs a bit more reinforcements. So we'll see that in the summer window.
And we're going to shift now to just a TFC perspective before I know Hady's going to be biased about it, but it's fine. It's why he's here. But we're going to, before we wrap up the video, we're going to take a look at the TFC sides. And for their perspective going into this match, I mean, they have huge expectations due to the money they spend. I already touched on the DP players that they have. They're in a bit of a predicament right now, because beforehand, they signed the 2 Italians. They were not a very balanced squad. They looked like they were going to go through a big rebuild. The money they put into the Italians and some other players obviously changed that. And they went into a match like this, which is a direct route to CONCACAF Champions League. And they lost to, again, this isn't any disrespect, but it's like you lost to a Montreal side at home that did not have Duke, the player that has really helped lift this side. They did not have Wanyama. They had Camacho playing as the 6. They just seemed like there was no desire to win. I know TFC has injuries, but it just seems like it's turning very ugly, not only on the pitch, but off the pitch. We saw the fights in the crowd. We saw a megaphone thrown towards Marc-Anthony Kaye. Alex, I need to ask you, where does TFC go from here? Is Bob Bradley involved? And I mean, really, what players could potentially even be on the way out as well?
Yeah, I feel like this is, I mean, we thought rock bottom for TFC was maybe last year, the year before, but at least then it was rebuilding, right? You had the kids getting their minutes, their struggle. At least you can look to the future and look to that. And a lot of those kids are gone now or not getting minutes. You brought in one of the oldest squads in the league, and this year was really supposed to be okay. Capitalize on the fact that you have a 31-year-old Insigne and a Bernadeschi who is still in the prime of his career. And so far, based on the fact that you're near the bottom of the table, you have all these injuries, which of course, questions maybe have to be asked of TFC's medical staff, because this happens every year. But also, you have one of the oldest teams in the league. You can't say it's something where it's out of the blue. It's something where questions do have to be asked, because it's like, what is the direction? What was the point of playing all those kids if those tough times they went through didn't even mean you stuck through them when you improved the roster around them? And obviously you paid all this money for Insigne and Bernadeschi. Those aren't moves you make if you're comfortable just sitting at the bottom of the table and rebuilding. So I think it's something where the fact as well that they went all out for this Canadian Championship, injuries aside, like they could have easily rested an Insigne or a Bernadeschi. They both started, they both played a big role. I think it's a huge disappointment for Toronto. I think something where questions genuinely have to be asked. Like Montreal, in my opinion, was in a lot better position than they were, even results aside, and they still made a trade like trading Kamal Miller, right? Like I think it's something where if you're Toronto, you have to look at that. Like, is it a trade? Is it firing Bob Bradley? Is it, does it go deeper than that? Does it go to the CEO, to the, the executive level? Because, I just think it's very surprising to see a club like TFC. Like that's a club that wants to win trophies. That's a club that takes derbies seriously. Like the fact that it's gotten this bad is very surprising.
And there you have it. So guys, let me know in the comments if you think Montreal are the new kings of the Classique. I mean, I think the numbers may speak for themselves, but Hady, I really appreciate giving your time today to come on. It was a lot of fun. And as guys, if you enjoyed this, as always, be sure to drop a like, drop a sub, and we'll see you guys next time. Cheers, friends.